is the 36th episode of CloudFocus Weekly for the third week of the crazy month of March. Some say it's mad. I don't know. 2011. This episode titled Warner Does It. CloudFocus Weekly is sponsored by Arkus, your cloud computing experts. And I'm your host, Jason Atwood. And joining me, co-host, because he is madder than a hatter, it's Justin Allison. Justin, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a wonderful afternoon in New York City. It's supposed to get to 70 degrees, some May weather. You are wearing shorts.
I'm wearing shorts.
Phenomenal.
It's awesome.
It's madness.
It is madness. We have a few mad things on our agenda today. I have a blog post about backing up, entitled "Backing Up is Hard to Do."
It's a phenomenal post.
Phenomenal.
I learned a thing or two.
Good. HP going to the clouds. Time Warner does streaming. Google Apps feature release changes and update. And then we'll end up with our 7 questions for Parker Harris. We'll talk about a couple. He did a little quick interview. Parker Harris, the co-founder of Salesforce.com, just to let you know. And then we'll finish with the CloudFocus app pick of the week, which it looks like you have 2. I think you're going to throw one in there. I have done 2 in the past, so that's fine. And then we'll wrap it up. So let's get started with all good things to go first. I'm not going to talk a lot because we have a huge agenda this week, but I wrote an article or a blog post about backing up, and it was basically I gave sort of the things I've learned in the last 10 years of running systems and technologies and doing my own personal backups, much more focused on personal. I think the things I'd want to say that take away from it are the rule of 3. Which I don't know if that's what the thing that you learned about or you learned, but the rule of 3 is
rule of 3.
Nothing exists unless it's in 3 places.
The rule of 3 and some of the products that you used were interesting.
Yeah,
like that was the things that I took away from it was the 3 places.
Yeah,
and on-site, off-site being very key in one copy next to your computer doesn't count as a backup.
Nope.
Like it's got to be somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think that people always say, "Oh, I've got a backup," but there's so many that's sitting right next to my computer. But if there's a fire or a theft, someone comes and steals your computer,
or a flood if it's on the floor,
or a flood, then you lose that. But then they say, "Oh, well, I use cloud backup." I have a couple friends that just use cloud backup, and I go, "That's not going to help you if you lose your computer." You lose your computer, again, you take this computer from me right now, with my brand new MacBook Pro, and you smashy with a hammer. I would say first, after the repercussions
of smashing me with
of things that would happen to the person who did that to me, I would go to the Apple store up the street, I'd give them a credit card, I'd purchase one, I'd go home, I'd plug it in, and I'd say backup from my time machine backup that happened this morning at 7. So I might lose whatever, few hours worth of work that I have saved locally, which is probably almost nothing. So you want to be able to get back to work fast, and you can get back to work fast with a full backup that is on a local drive that you have access to. End of story. Then you want to make sure that some of your stuff, or all of it, is also in the cloud. So if you were to, if the unforeseeable happened, earthquakes, hurricanes, whatever, and you lost the computer and the backup that was sitting there, you want to make sure that you can get back to, a slower recovery, but still have your key files. So your emails, all your files. So I use sort of multiple strategies, as I wrote in the podcast, in the blog post. I do that every week. But I use multiple strategies because I don't even trust one cloud service. So I've been using MobileMe for a long time. I've actually never lost anything on MobileMe. But
MobileMe is not a full backup. I mean, they only give you, 10 gig, 20 depending on what service
it's
you
more
buy.
For files. So I just put all my files
stuff
in there.
Goes in there.
Yeah, because basically
it's not like you could back up your iTunes library to MobileMe.
No. In my iTunes library, I leave on my Drobo, and I have a theory about the iTunes library. It's too huge to back up. I mean, I have 4. I think my iTunes library is 2.7 terabytes. It's large, but I don't want.
You just showed off a little.
I did a little bit, my terabytes. But again, a lot of them are movies that I've ripped from my own DVDs that I have. That if I lost those DVDs, and I think this is what you have to think about too, is your data. Is what's going to cause you the most headache, and if you lose pictures of your kids, you're going to cry for a long time. If you lose 10 Michael Jackson albums that you bought on iTunes, go buy them again. Or if you lose a movie, I can't go see 16 Candles, or I own it on DVD and I have
That's
to
the
re-rip
one you
it.
chose.
I don't
16
know.
Candles?
Conan the Destroyer.
You could have said any movie in the world.
I was thinking of one.
Candles.
Anyway, so read the blog post. It's up on blog.arkusinc.com. I think it's good. I think it gives an overview, and I kind of use the tools that I actually use in some of the strategy. And
I thought it was great.
Oh, good. Well, thank you.
I learned some stuff from it. Really
Thank
good.
you. All right.
Not often I can say that I learned something from you. It was great.
That's not often at all. So the next story is about Hewlett-Packard.
Yep.
Basically painting a road to the cloud, which is interesting. So this, again, it's sort of a pressy, releasey type of thing to say we see the cloud as a way to go, but interesting in that they are sort of embracing it. And as bigger companies, as IBMs and Microsofts and companies that have been traditionally not about the cloud because they build services, things that aren't, as they start to say this is the way we're going, I think it just changes. It just another push on the industry to say start to think about this as a real alternative.
Well, isn't HP or haven't they traditionally been more of a hardware company?
Well, yeah, HP started as a hardware company, did hardware for a long time, fought against. I'm embraced to use an HP because it was sort of the corporate thing. They actually then went into having stores, so they had the whole Apple model, the Apple Store model. They had brought all these HP stores across the country. I think they had 25 at one point. Yeah. They all failed miserably.
Yeah, I know them mostly for PCs, laptops, printers. Like that's what I think of HP, right? And
so they bought Palm last year.
Palm, so they're getting into operating system with WebOS.
Yep.
And now it looks like they're moving into sort of the software as a service model, where hey, we're good at hardware, and maybe we can just stack up a bunch of hardware and create a web service or a cloud service.
They can touch their cloud. Say, here's my cloud. It's right here. It's vending off jokes. And so
they're talking about being a public cloud, not like a private cloud.
Right.
So that's good.
But what do they know about software? So
well, that's the thing. That's what I was trying to say. Like, I think of them as a hardware company, so they'll probably have some great hardware for their public cloud to sit on. That doesn't make any sense.
Those words you just said don't make any sense.
They'll have good stacks in their data center.
Stacks and stacks of land.
But, they bought WebOS. They're working on different tablet devices, which, again, are hardware. But when you think about tablets and little web, what are they called? Like web laptops, those little laptops.
Yep.
I mean, the cloud is really the way to go on those things, because as good as like a iPad is with apps, they really need to connect to something. So, I mean, maybe they're sort of trying to pull all that stuff together in their strategy and say, well, WebOS is all about the web, and here's this cloud service that you can build apps on, and maybe that's what they're thinking. But clearly they see that as being the future and not necessarily their hardware business and building up software.
And as much as cloud computers don't want to admit it, the cloud exists on someone's hardware. So Salesforce uses Dell. So the cloud has to sit on someone's hardware. So it's not like they're not self-propagating. If they were to build a public cloud, they wouldn't build it with Dell servers. They'd build it with HP servers.
Well, that's what I was saying.
So right? So there's a benefit to them. I just wonder, because I've been in software for a long, long time, from anywhere from a programmer to whatever. I just know it's a very difficult thing to do, and the companies that can build software correct or build good software are few and far between. So lots of companies can build crappy software. The ones that can build successful long-term software are just, there's not a lot of them out there. So I would say, does HP have the intelligence or the I'm flubbing on words, but I'm trying to say society. I don't know. I'm gone.
The culture
to build software, because we talk about a lot. It's unlike building a bridge. It's unlike building a almost anything else, because it does change and evolve and moves and shakes, and there's always updates to it, and the scenarios that you can run against it are limitless. So, but maybe they will, and interesting that they're getting there. Again, another just a big push towards companies thinking about it. So next one is actually a little more interesting, I think, in terms of, in the last couple of weeks we've talked a lot, because I think it's a huge movement this year, which is sort of cloud cloud TV or cloud entertainment, right? Having all these services that are now streaming stuff down to you, or streaming stuff from your own services, but streaming it to you. And now Time Warner, a local cable company, has jumped in and said and actually launched, and now there's been reviews of it, a application for the iPad that can stream. Not just, a lot of people have put out, DirecTV has put out, like, all of them have put out I can manipulate or see or even send to my DVR if I want to, like, record things, like control stuff. This is the first one to put out you can watch our service. So Time Warner Cable, although limited, there's only certain channels, there's only like 20 channels, but you can stream live cable TV over Wi-Fi to your iPad.
In your house.
So the limitations. Only certain channels.
32.
32 channels. Only in your house. Only over Wi-Fi. So it actually looks to, I think this is actually pretty smart, it looks to the cable, the location it's getting it from. So it'll only allow it to come from a Time Warner cable internet provider, which I think for people who might have Time Warner for their cable and Verizon for their whatever, they have a DSL line, I think those people might go, ooh, maybe I should switch over to cable modem because I get this other feature. I've heard there's some issues with it, like sound and stuff on the iPad.
I'm sure there's plenty of issues with it.
But they made a big splash.
Well, I've been doing this for a long time. I have a Slingbox, and I've had one forever.
Explain to the people at home what a Slingbox is.
Slingbox is phenomenal. That's all I need to say. No, a Slingbox is a box. It's a set-top box. That slings. Essentially, you plug your cable into the back of the Slingbox, and then you route the cable, through the Slingbox into your TV, or you could just go, has an in and an out, essentially. Right. You can just put your cable into it, and then you connect it to your internet as well, connect over Wi-Fi, and then it can shoot your TV, the box that it's connected to, out to wherever you are.
So it takes in video, it encodes it for streaming, and then streams it out over the
internet to you via an app that you can have on your PC, on your Mac, on your laptop, on your iPad, on your iPhone. It works over 3G. You can control it with the remote control. You can set your DVR. You could watch things on your DVR. It's amazing. It's
like a takeover of your home,
of your cable box.
Right?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I've been using it for years, like 4 or 5 years now. I've had it. So this to me is cool that the cable companies are jumping in and saying, oh, we're going to include that type of service, but not quite as cool as what Slingbox can do, because Slingbox can, I can be in an airport and, on my iPhone, hop to my cable and watch something I DVR'd last night.
Right.
Or
watch something live.
Forget that I need to DVR something for tomorrow because I'm not going to be home and DVR it. Or watch something live, exactly. So, I mean,
the limitation is you have to be watching what's on the cable at the time.
You're literally controlling that cable box.
So if someone's
home watching TV, which I've done, I've changed the channel on them, and then they text me like, hey, what are you doing? Sorry.
I assume that won't be a problem, but okay, that's cool. That's very cool.
So, yeah, I mean, I think Slingbox is awesome, but this is a step in the right direction for some of these, particularly for Time Warner, putting an app out on the iPad. I mean, it doesn't have certain features that I think people wanted, like DVR scheduling, a remote control to be able to, punch in numbers. I think you have to, slide through all of the channels that are available.
Well, it's only 32. It's good.
Only 32, but...
it's live.
It's live, and they've made a big marketing splash. There's been, we're here in New York, and Time Warner is one of the big providers here in New York.
Although not my provider.
Not yours, but they're all over commercials for this thing. So it's like, they just show the iPad, in different places in someoe's house. Like, look, you can be anywhere watching your TV.
Right.
Like, now you don't need to buy a TV. You can just use this
basically
thing.
Gives you, I think the way they've architected it gives you a movable TV in your house. And to be honest, my iPad gives you for a lot of stuff, but TV is a lot of streaming Netflix and watching movies, and now streaming internally and Hulu. That's a lot of what I use the iPad for.
I think I use the iPad 90% of the time to do just that.
I have maybe a pick of the week that will help out with that.
Me too.
So interesting. Again, I love it. Give me more and different ways to access data and make the time shift and make the location shift just transparent. I love watching a Netflix, season of we're now on Scrubs. We're watching Scrubs, and I finish one episode on the big TV, and then we head to bed and boot up the iPad, and it's right where I left off, and it's just seamless and it works. Like, do that, and I'm happy, and I will pay you money. Jason Atwood, will pay you money if I can get access to stuff, make it easy. I have Time Warner. I could get Time Warner in my apartment, so maybe I'll get it just so I can do this. No,
no, you won't.
No, I won't.
That would be ridiculous.
Oh, wait. But maybe. Okay, so next
Time
story.
Warner had the NFL Network, maybe.
That's true, they don't. I've got NFL. RCN does. Go ahead.
All right, so our next story. Google Apps feature release process. They've changed it.
They listened to us.
They listened to the CloudFocus weekly podcast, and we've talked about this many times, where Google Apps is a great service, and you always get the latest and greatest things that they put out without having to install patches or whatever. But sometimes in an enterprise situation, that is not what you want. You don't want to wake up one day, go to work, and have a brand new user interface without knowing that was coming. So Google's changing their feature release process. They're giving you an option, essentially 2 tracks that you can join as a Google Apps administrator. Essentially, you control this.
Yep.
So you can join the rapid release program or the scheduled release program. And the rapid release program is essentially you get access to the new features as soon as they've been completed and QA'd by Google. So
right.
As soon as they, essentially what happens now. So as soon as they release it, you get it.
Yeah.
No notice, no nothing.
If you didn't want
Here
it,
it is. If you didn't want it, doesn't matter. You got it.
Right.
Sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it's more storage in Gmail. Sometimes it's more attachment types that you can attach to Google Docs. But sometimes it's like, here's a new user interface, and we didn't tell you it was coming, so have fun training your users when they log in.
Right.
The other process is the scheduled release process. So scheduled release, you can gain access to new features on a regular weekly release schedule following the initial release of the features. So the delay essentially allows the administrator to familiarize themselves with all the features in a test domain. So you sort of get access to the features in like a sandbox, educate the support staff, take screenshots, communicate the changes to your users, and then they'll be released on the schedule each Tuesday with at least 1 week notice following the initial feature launch. So it's still not like change it when I want to change it, but at least it gives you a little time to do the screenshots, you don't really necessarily have to do the testing, but because they sort of do that for you, make sure it doesn't break.
If you have any
you still want to,
right.
you still want to do some testing,
or if there's
and communications, compliance issues, support, right? Get support up on the new UI or the new feature that someone might be like, what is this? So good for Google for taking this first step. I think it's a first step. They need to do more, I still think, in this space, in giving people more control over opting into features that come out. But this is a good first step.
And it is something that I think Salesforce is, again, Salesforce, the company that we talk about a lot because we're the most connected to them, but they have a similar thing in a couple ways. One is they have a very scheduled release. I still think they do it better, meaning they give you at least 6 weeks to test stuff out. So you get at least a 6-week window that you can go in and test out the new release.
In your environment. They even give you pre-release before that. Like a dev, this is totally fresh.
Right.
Not your sandbox, but fresh.
And they're on a very scheduled release cycle. So if you've been around Salesforce for more than a year, there's going to be roughly 3. There almost always is 3. There's going to be 1 in January, February, 1 in June, I think it's always June, May, June, and 1 in the fall, let's call it October, November, and that's when they're going to hit. And so, it's like you don't have to plan, you don't have to say, oh, is there going to be a release this fall? You know that. And it's a big release to all the things, so there's features under all of them. It sounds like they're like every week you could be looking for another set, which I think is actually harder to do. It's like, because then every week I got to be paying attention, as opposed to I got to pay attention 3 times a year.
As an administrator of an enterprise-wide system, you should be paying attention every day. But
to new releases, new features.
I think so.
No, you gotta be doing something else.
If your job is to administer, let's just say you were the Exchange guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you should be sort of...
No one updates Exchange because it's too much of a nightmare.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, you're on top of stuff like every day. Right. I think this would be easier for you.
I think that I would suggest to them that they change another track and they make it. They put these releases, the ones that you get to scheduled release, that they don't do it a 1 week after, because that still makes them they put it on Monday. You have got until the next Monday to get it right. I think they should go to sort of scheduled release at least monthly and then bundle them. So if they're going to do a docs, email, whatever happened in that last month would then happen on that day. So then you can communicate out. The other thing is users, they don't want to see like literally new feature. You want to be able to communicate in like, here's a bunch of new stuff to go look at, not one thing. So good start, long way to go. I think Salesforce does it much better in terms of scheduling it on a.
They also have the opt-in stuff.
They have much better opt-in.
Like they give you the feature and then you go turn it on.
Mostly. Sometimes they
just turn stuff on, but most of the time it's like, here's some features, check a box.
So speaking of checking a box, I don't know how I'm going to do this. 7 questions for Salesforce Parker Harris.
Let's pick one that we each like.
Yeah, so it's actually it's on the All Things Digital D, which they have their D conference. It's actually a great conference if you can afford it. But they do some really interesting. So Parker Harris, co-founder of Salesforce.com. He's the infrastructure guy. He's the guy who builds out everything. Mark's out there talking, yip yapping about this and that. Parker is the guy doing the stuff in the background, making sure it all works, making sure Mark's vision comes true. So it's 7 questions for him. I don't think there was any huge. They talked a little bit about their Tokyo. They have a new pod, is what they call them, Salesforce pod. They're putting in Tokyo. It's okay. It's not part of this earthquake problem or issue. But then talked about Chatter and how did they get ready for it. They used Akamai as their load balancer or their content delivery network, CDN. It was kind of interesting. I think the piece that I saw between the lines was sort of, did Chatter, the commercial, get you what you thought it was going to get you? And what Parker kind of says is, yeah, we got a lot of people coming to the website, we got a lot of people at the sign-up page, and it was a great success. That to me sort of, if you don't say the number, right, that kind of means you didn't get what you wanted.
Going back to the number, when we talked about CloudForce New York, and we said, how many customers will have signed up for Chatter? I think the number ended up being like 80,000.
It's 85,000 or 85. Yeah, 80 or 85.
I think my guess was 85. Yours was like 250.
Yeah.
And it was like 80.
We're both wrong.
Both wrong.
Right.
Price is Right rules.
Yep.
So, I mean, clearly they didn't get the spike I think that they thought they were going to get immediately from Chatter.com.
I just went through training this week with a client, and I did 3 training sessions with 2 different clients. So I have, like, so I had to explain and train on Chatter 3 different times. And it's still difficult. I'm a guy who uses Chatter. I'm a guy who's out there in the Twitterverse. We had a lot of, I don't like Facebooks, and it's the second time I didn't mention Facebook. It is not an easy thing to describe.
When someone contracts with you to set up a CRM system, yes. Chatter's not what they're thinking they're getting.
That's not true, though. When they are, all the clients that we have that are setting up Salesforce, they're excited by Chatter. They love the concept, like that the big picture stuff. Like, oh, it's communication. But then when you get down to the how do you use it, it's something that you actually have to try, and you just like I think we worked on it. I mean, this has gone a little bit back, but we've had access to Chatter for a long time, and I've been using Chatter for a long time. It wasn't until we kind of really started using it for, I would say, 2 months before we kind of said, oh, okay, I can shift what I'm doing over here to here, and that makes more sense. And there's still cases where I think, you did one the other day, you put up something on Chatter, and I said, could you put it in the Google Wave?
Good one.
Yep, good. And, it was okay there, but I didn't want it there because I wanted more of a permanent record of it. Chatter kind of has a non-permanency to it. It kind of disappears. right? Because it gets out of your feed. And so there's certain things that, you posted some other thing. I thought that was good because it was a one-time shot. I wanted to look at it, but if it disappears in 2 months, I can find it. But so I think it's really about trying to get your head around it, work it into your process, and that's not an easy thing. And it's good news for people like us who do Chatter implementations to really help companies work on how they implement Chatter. It's not just turning on a feature; it's implementing. Anyway, so 7 questions. A great article. It's on All Things Digital or All Things D. Came out actually this morning. So now, speaking of things that came out this morning, I think we're doing some CloudFocus app picks of the week. Today is Friday, March 18th. So March Madness is full underway. So I expect you to pick a March Madness pick.
That is
correct. Are you going to go 2 or 1?
Because we're running low on time.
Well, do a fun one and then do the real one.
I'll do a fun one first. All right. So we did talk about streaming. The March Madness On Demand app on the iPad from the NCAA.
Yep.
Is fantastic. I mean, you hop on that thing on the iPad and you can stream every game live, see the box scores, see the stats, jump from game to game. It is awesome. I mean, I was at my girlfriend's house last night and she hates basketball, so she was sitting there watching like Glee on the DVR, and I'm sitting there with my iPad watching every game. It was just awesome.
Cool. I think
just
we made
amazing.
NCAA. I think we made Final Fantasy March Madness picks last week. So go. What's your real pick? Which actually I like better. Than this
my real pick is very useful because you hit up against a limit in our org. In our Salesforce
500 Chatter follows.
You had 500 things that you were following.
Even when you're following 500 things, do you know it still suggests that you follow things?
Oh, that's not right.
Do you know even if you've unfollowed things, it still suggests that you follow things you've unfollowed?
It shouldn't do that. But anyway, my favorite, Force.com Labs, put a free app out on the App Exchange called Chatter Unfollow Rules. And it is what it sounds like. You go in, there's a unfollow tab, you click the tab, it brings up a page, and it allows you to, for each object, create rules that are basically logic. This equals that, opportunity stage equals closed one. After 2 days, I want to unfollow it. Yep. Or, we track projects. Projects equals archive. After 2 days, let me unfollow it. Or immediately that night, let me unfollow it. It runs on a batch every night, and it works. It runs through and unfollows records for you. And when you hit up against that 500, you need something to automate that for you because it's a pain to go through and unfollow things.
It's very smart. I mean, the ones that we have in, we do track all our invoices in Salesforce. So once it's been paid, no one wants to follow it anymore. Who cares? It's kind of it's a dead object at that point. Issues, once they've been closed, you don't want to follow them. Leads converted, once they've been converted, you don't want to follow an old non-converted lead or a converted lead. Closed opportunity, once it's closed, it's a piece of history. Generally things shouldn't happen to it, so you can say 2 weeks after or whatever. That's really, it's a great tool. It should be built in.
It should be built in, and more than 500 things following should also be built in.
Yeah,
so
I'm
sure once they got to scale it out. Once they do, it will, I imagine. Safe harbor.
Yes. Safe harbor t-shirt. All right, great pick. I'm going to pick 2 things. I'll make my fun pick first because... So my fun pick first is for the new iPad. I got the new iPad. I love it. They're both for the new iPad. One's fun. Real Racing HD 2. Real Racing 2 HD. A racing game, unbelievable. I'm addicted to this thing. I'm racing. You can get cars and championships and whatever. It's awesome. And then the other one is WebEx for the iPad. It's now WebEx 2. It's free. You can use it on WebEx. The thing they've added, video. So you can now use it for video in the video conferencing, and it'll show you multiple people in the conference with you. So I love using the thing, WebEx for the iPad to join meetings. You can do audio. You can do everything you can do almost online. You can't share your own thing, but now includes video and uses the camera so you can be participant. So at this point, you're a mobile. You can almost do everything you can mobily with the WebEx. So WebEx 2 for the iPad. That's my CloudFocus app pick of the week. And go to blog.arkusinc.com. Subscribe to that by RSS. Follow Justin at Just Edelstein on Twitter, and I'm at Jason M. Atwood. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/ArkusInc. And as always, go to iTunes, subscribe to this podcast there, and you'll get it whenever we put it out. So this week we're actually doing it on a Friday, which is a little late, but we'll be consistently putting it out. So subscribe there. And until next week, enjoy the very sunny day that we're having here in New York. Almost 70 degrees. Very, very happy. Bye-bye.